would like to write something, I always encourage you, if a school says something is optional, do it because it just adds additional strength to your application. So take advantage of every optional option that you are given. And then there is the open question. And so I'm going to be talking about all of these different things, but we'll start with the main essays, which is, I know, the point of angst for so many students. So we're going to be talking about primarily the Common App essay and then the PIQs for the UCs. The Coalition for College application, most students in Southern California don't use that application, so I'm not going to go over that in particular, but it is a 500 to 550 word essay, and there are 8 prompts. But I'm not going to actually go into the details about that particular application, but I will look at the Common App. So the Common App, there are 7 prompts for the personal essay, and it should be between 200 and 650 words. And then there are school-specific applications, and we're going to look primarily at the UCs and the PIQs. So what's really, really important is that when you're filling out your essay, when you're writing all of these various essays, that you choose the prompts that inspire you and that feel the most natural, because that's where your characteristics are going to come out. They're going to shine a little bit brighter if you're doing something that comes naturally to you. And be sure that you answer the question. And I'm going to go over this and I'm going to say that again and again and again. So you're going to get really tired of me saying that. So let's look at the personal insight questions. There are 8 questions. You need to choose 4 of them. Choose the ones that inspire you. All the questions are equal. So there's no question that weighs more than another. I know students all the time, they're like, well, which one should I answer? Does this one, do they like this one better? Do they? No, they're all the same. Just choose the 4 that speak to you, that feel the most inspiring and the most naturals. Because when something feels natural, you're going to write something that's, more insightful, I think. These are max 350 words, so they're not really long essays. And sometimes that's more of a challenge than writing a longer essay because you need to get a lot of information in just a few words. And again, be sure you answer the questions. That's really important. So just the examples of what the UC personal insight questions were, at least for this year, there may be some changes over the summer, but in general, these have been pretty much what they've been the last few years. So describe an example of your leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. Okay, that's pretty cut and dry, pretty black and white question. Second question, every person has a creative side and it can be expressed in many ways. Problem solving, original, innovative thinking, and artistically, to name a few. Describe how you express your creative side. What would you say is your greatest talent or skill? How have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? This question is 2 parts, so you need to make sure that you're answering both parts of this question, which again, in 350 words, that's challenging. Describe how you have taken advantage of a significant educational opportunity or worked to overcome an educational barrier you have faced. That one's pretty black and white. Describe the most significant challenge you have faced and the steps you have taken to overcome this challenge. Part 1. How has this challenge affected your academic achievement? Part 2. So again, there's 2 parts to this question. Number 6, think about an academic subject that inspires you. Describe how you have furthered this interest inside and or outside of the classroom. 7, what have you done to make your school or community a better place? And 8, beyond what has already been shared in your application, what do you believe makes you stand out as a strong candidate for the UC system? So those are the 8 questions. What I typically recommend students try and do is to try and take each one and try and write something. You might be able to write a couple of sentences and then just say, no, this just doesn't feel right. You may end up writing a page and then you've got to cut it down. Maybe pick the ones that you think that sort of, I don't know, speak to you first and try with those. But don't be afraid to try with each of them because you may surprise yourself. You may think that number 7 is not something that you are going to be able to write about, and then something comes up in your head and you start writing and you've got, 3 paragraphs already. So give yourself, try and do like a writing exercise, and just try and get something down on paper. One thing I always say, don't get rid of anything you put down on paper or on your screen. Because you might be able to use it for another essay, whether it's a UC essay or whether it's a Common App essay or some other kind of essay. So keep everything you get down on paper, and don't get rid of that. So those are the personal insight questions. These are pretty black and white. Again, 350 words. They really just want you to answer the questions. You don't have to be super creative. They're not going to be long like the Common App essay, where you can actually get a little bit more creative. These are pretty black and white. So really just try, and because you just don't have a lot of space, so just try and be succinct and answer these questions pretty forthright. The personal statement for the Common App is a little bit different. 7 prompts, and you only choose one. Again, choose the one that inspires you, that feels the most natural, and answer the question. And many of them are more than one part. Many of them are 2 or 3 questions within the question. Again, you want to make sure that you're answering all 2 or 3. So some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that they believe their application would be incomplete without. Oh, sorry. I thought somebody, okay. If this sounds like you, please share your story. 2, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. That's one part. How did it affect you? 2 parts. And what did you learn from the experience? So that's a 3-part question. Okay. Reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? Another 3-part question. So when you're writing these things, make sure that you're answering all of these. Reflect on something that someone has done for you that has made you happy or thankful. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth. Describe a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging it makes you lose track of time. Okay, number 7 is share an essay on any topic of your choice. It can be one you've already written, one that responds to a different prompt, or one of your own design. What I will say is that when I'm reading an application and somebody chooses that 7th prompt, it is typically one of the weaker essays. Those essays tend not to be as strong because you don't have a question. You've learned in your literature classes that in order to write a strong essay or a strong research paper, you need to have a question. And if there's not a question, they're not as strong. Also, what some students will do is they'll take that essay that they wrote for their AP Lit class and they got an A on, and they'll just pop that in and use that. The problem with that is it's not a personal essay. And the people that are reading your application, most of us are not English teachers. We're not going to be looking at your prose. We don't care if you got an A on the essay. If we haven't learned anything about you, you've wasted that space in your application to help us get to know you a little bit better. And that really is the point of these essays. It's really to help us get to know you a little bit better. It's to personalize the essay a bit. If you have written a prior essay that was a personal essay, maybe you had to write an essay for a scholarship or for some other kind of application, fine, then that's great. But it should be a personal essay, not just some random, report that tells us nothing about you. It just shows that you're able to write well and get an A in your AP class. So just remember that. You really want to take advantage of this to help us get to know you a little bit better. So the important thing is you want to help the admissions officer, us, the ones that are reading your applications, get to know you. It should be personal. You want to make yourself stand out in some way, shape, or form. And I always say, don't hold back. This is the chance to sell yourself. So take advantage of this. You've got 650 words or 350 words to tell us all about yourself, to let us know who you are as a person, what is important to you, what your background is, what makes you tick, all of those things. So really, don't be afraid, you can brag a little bit. I know we're taught not to be boastful, but this is your chance. Kind of take it like as if you were in sort of a job interview. don't be afraid to tell us, the what makes you strong, what makes you a strong candidate for our particular university. So it's not a writing exercise, as I mentioned. I'm not sitting there reading your essay with a red pen in my hand making corrections, but it should be well written and easy to read. So what does that mean? That means that you should have somebody proofread it for you. That doesn't mean rewrite it. That means check it for grammar, check it for, punctuation. Um, One of my techniques that I've always used when I write papers is I read the paper out loud to myself, because you can then hear where it's kind of clunky, where maybe the punctuation doesn't work, that sort of thing. If you have somebody you feel comfortable with, read it out loud to them, especially somebody who knows you well, because they can even say, you know what, that doesn't really sound like you. That doesn't sound natural. Or that sentence is really awkward. Maybe you can rewrite that sentence a little bit, kind of change it up a bit. So don't be afraid to ask people to help you with that. But, we're not talking about rewriting it. We're just talking about helping you with that. The important thing is that when I'm reading your application, I'm not getting held up because there's bad grammar or because there's bad punctuation, which makes me have to reread the sentence 3 or 4 times to understand what you're trying to say. And then I'm losing track of you. And you don't want me to lose track of you when I'm reading your application. We like to say that, you want to begin your essay with some kind of a hook or a snare, something that will draw your reader in. The reason we say that is because imagine that we read 20 to 30 applications a day. And it's very helpful to have something that sounds interesting to kind of draw our interest, draw us into your essay. So, but, just to kind of keep that in mind. The conclusion is really important, because at the end of the day, after I've read 30 applications and 30 essays, what is going to make me remember you? And that a strong conclusion is really going to help with that. Okay, so those you kind of want to remember, the beginning and the end are very, very important. But remember, there are no right or wrong answers. Again, this is about you. This is what's important to you. Whether it's your family, whether it's an experience that you had, whether it's an activity that you do, whatever that is. Don't worry about what we want to hear, because if you're applying to, let's say, 10 universities, you're going to have at least 2 to 3 people reading your application. There's no way that you can please 30 people that are coming from all different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, different geographical backgrounds, different biographical backgrounds. You just have to be true to yourself and make sure that you're writing something that makes sense for you, to help us get to know you. One tip that I often give students when you're starting to write your applications, if you're going to be applying to UCs and to Common App schools, my tip, and you don't have to follow this, but it's just a tip, is to write the Common App application or essay first, because it's a longer essay. And often once you've written that essay, you can kind of break it up sometimes and get maybe 2 or 3 PIQ essays out of that. You need to supplement them and move them around and things, kind of reword them a bit. But it might make writing those PIQ essays a little bit easier. So just something to keep in mind, just an idea. Okay, so getting started on your essay. First thing after I tell you that we need a good intro is don't get hung up on the intro, because then you're never going to start writing your essay. You can always get the essay down, get the main body down, and then you can think about something to sort of start it, some kind of good intro. A lot of times when I'm doing essay writing workshops in the summer with rising seniors, I'll be looking at their essay, and I'll find a really good first line, usually in their second or third paragraph. And we just sort of take it and move it up to the front, and that's kind of the sentence, that first sentence that sort of draws the reader in. So that's something that you can do later. So don't let yourself, get hung up on that, and so that you don't even start writing. Start jotting down ideas now. If something comes up, just write it down. Get stuff down, because you don't want to forget an idea. Maybe you have a really good idea. Maybe you have a really good phrase. Just make sure that you get that down somewhere. Start a notebook or notes on your phone, wherever, whatever you feel comfortable with. But keep those ideas so that you've got them when it comes to sitting down to write. I would say, my best ideas always come when I'm swimming or in the shower, feels like. So, if that happens, make sure as soon as you can to get on your phone and just like jot it down really quickly. Keep your phone or a notepad by your bed. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and you have a great idea, make sure that you get it down. You can treat your essay like a puzzle. So you've got all these ideas that you've been jotting down for months, and you can sort of rearrange them and start to put things together, or you can create an outline. That's really a personal choice. That's whatever your style is. And I think that that will also come out in your essay. That'll show, whether you've got a more analytical mind or whether you're a more creative kind of person. But just start getting everything down, and then you can rearrange it and organize it however works best for you. So that's the Common App essay, and we're going to do questions at the end too, but I want to move on to the supplemental essay. So the supplemental essay is something that not every school will have. So if you are applying to a Common App school, the application is the same for every school, except for when it comes to things like the supplemental essay. So some will ask them, some will not. They're short, they're typically 1 to 2 paragraphs maximum. But they're really important. I can tell you that my deans sit around every year and have several meetings about what our supplemental essay is going to be. It's very important. So it usually will show us, it can either give us more information about you, or it can give us an idea of how serious you are about attending our university. We know you apply to many schools, so are we number 1 on your list? Are we number 10 on your list? Or are we somewhere in between? It just kind of helps us gauge your interest a little bit. So you should show that you have done your research about the schools that you are applying to, and each supplemental essay should be unique and separate. Do not cut and paste. It is very easy to, be applying to NYU and to put in the supplemental essay, and USC is my top choice. Super easy if you're cutting and pasting. So that is something you do not want, you want to stay away from that. So make sure that you write an individual essay for each school, and there should be specific reasons you're applying to each school. And so, show you've done your research about a school, where it is, what the majors are, if you have to live on campus, if there are sports, if there's study abroad, if there's an honors college, whatever it is, what kind of classes they offer, all of those things. Make sure you've done your research. And then talk about your specific interest in that university. Because if it's very generic, and you can just kind of pop in every school that you're applying to, you haven't really done your research. So we really want to kind of see and it could just be that, you visited campus and you fell in love with the campus. That's fine. That's okay too. But that's really important, that you take each university and really think about the reasons that you're applying to that specific school. Sometimes it's why you. Why are you a good fit for our school? So it's not necessarily why are you interested in us, but why do you think you'll be good for us, good on a good citizen on our campus, why you'll be successful on our campus, those sorts of things. So those are kind of the kind of things that you'll be asked in the supplemental essays. And here's just some general ideas of what kind of questions you might find. And the first one is probably the most common. Why do you think you're a good fit for our university? Why do you think diversity is important, and how can you bring diversity to our campus? Now, when we talk about diversity on a college campus, we're not talking necessarily about ethnic diversity, because I have lots of students that look like me and they say, well, what am I going to say? How can I bring diversity? It can be geographical diversity. If you're applying to an out-of-state school from California, you're bringing geographic diversity. Maybe it's religious diversity. Maybe you're applying to a very, very unique major. And so that's a form of diversity. So there are many, many forms of diversity. And so you need to sort of be, very creative and think about that in a much broader way than what what we usually think of that word means. Some schools like to have some fun questions, like name the top five most influential people in your life and how they've influenced you. If you had a theme song, a piece of music that describes you, what would it be and why? So some schools you'll see that they also have some of these kinds of questions, but the most common are going to be more about why you're a good fit for our school. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. And then there's the open question. So the open question is a spot on the application where you can talk about anything that you haven't already discussed. So something that's not in your essay, it's not on your list of activities. Um, it's not meant to be another complete essay. It's meant to supplement something, to let us know some kind of information that you haven't been able to let us know in another section of the application. So, what else do you want to let us know about yourself? Do you have any anomalies on your transcript? Did you have a really tough freshman year? Maybe you can talk about, why you had a tough freshman year and your GPA wasn't as high. Maybe you had a low GPA sophomore year, but and you transferred schools. So you can let us know, sophomore year I transferred schools, I had a tough transition, whatever that might be. We had a lot of that this year because of the fires last year. So a lot of students, they changed schools a few different times. I know many of you might have been affected by that. So, that's definitely a place that you can write about that if it's not part of your essay. Um, Maybe you had a concussion, maybe you have a learning difference. And so that's affected your grades, or maybe you haven't taken as many APs as some of your friends have taken because of that. Maybe you didn't get diagnosed with a learning difference until much later. And so there's a big difference between maybe your freshman and sophomore grades and then your junior, senior grades. So that's a place that you could explain that. So anything else that you just weren't able to talk about, either in your essay, or maybe you didn't want to talk about it in your essay, or in your list of activities. So, just keep that. It's a tool. You don't have to fill this out. If you feel like your essay is complete, great, but just know it's there. And I just encourage you not to write another full essay, because that's not what it's meant for. And that's a lot of reading that you put on your reader, because we've already got the letters of rec and all the other things that we need to be reading as well. Okay, so use that wisely and judiciously, but know that that's a tool for you to be able to let us know more about yourself. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about AI. So I was doing an essay workshop this summer, and one of the students just said, "So why can't I just not write my essay with AI?" Well, yeah, sure you can, but it's not going to be a good personal essay, because the point of these, again, is not how well you write. It's helping us get to know you. So AI can be helpful. It can be a tool to help you organize your thoughts, brainstorm ideas. You get all those things that, like I said, you've been writing down ideas all, for the past few months. AI can maybe organize those into something that's a little bit more coherent, to help you get started. But if you use ChatGPT or some other AI source to write your entire essay, it's going to result in something that's impersonal and ineffective, even if it sounds better than what you could write. So, it might be perfect grammatically, but it's not going to be personal. We actually did a trial run this year with AI to help us read personal essays, hoping to summarize them a little bit so we wouldn't have to be reading entire essays. And, we tried a few, each of us tried like 3 or 4 or 5 AI kind of rewrites of the personal essays, and they all sounded exactly the same. They weren't in the students' voices. They were super generic. You'd read it and it would be a synopsis of the essay, but then you'd go in and you'd read the student's essay, and it was just so much more personal. So that's why you don't want to use AI. And we really want to hear your voice. We can recognize, we use programs to recognize AI generated essays even if they're not obvious. And it definitely will lessen the positive effect on your application. And it also brings into question your work ethic. And, are you going to be able to do your own original work when you come to our college campus if you can't even, write an essay um, with your original words. So just remember that it might be a perfectly written essay, but it's not going to be in your voice. And so it won't have the strong effect that a personal essay will have. Um, let's see here. Okay. So those are basically all the different types of essays that you're going to come across in your applications. I don't know if do we have questions that we want to answer to the group?
I'm looking right now. I don't have any questions as I don't think any of the other counselors have them either. So you answered a
Okay.
good amount for for our families. That was great.
Does if you do have questions, pop them in the chat so we can try and answer them.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I do have one question.
okay.
Yeah, so my one of the students is asking, can an application officer tell that your essay is being written by someone else? Hmm.
Well, I mean, if it's completely written by someone else, I mean, no. If it's written by somebody like an adult, like a college counselor or a coach or a writing coach, something like that, um, there's a difference between an essay that's written by a 17-year-old, no matter how well they write, and an essay that's written by a 30, 40, 50-year-old. So we often can tell in that way that it's, like way too mature or way using words that are just not words that a 17-year-old would normally use. So in that sense, yes. But the question is, again, is it going to talk about you? Is it going to be a personal essay? Are we going to learn more about you? Um, and the last thing you want to do is have somebody write your essay, and maybe it's a perfect essay. You get in, and then you can't write at a college level when you get to campus. So there's going to be a question. If we find out that there's anything that's dishonest, then that is also means for us. Even if you've already been admitted, we can always take back our decision. So I encourage you to be honest. We assume that everybody who is filling out their applications are filling them out honestly, writing their essays honestly. We have from time to time had to renege on our admissions offers, so that does actually happen. So I just encourage you, just write about yourself. And again, it's 250 to 650 words. So we're not looking for Pulitzer Prize essays here. We just want to learn more about you. And so, I really encourage you not to have somebody write your essay.
I have one actually come in too. How do you help students find a unique angle instead of writing a generic good kid essay?
The thing is, a lot of students are afraid that, whatever they have to write about is going to be cliche. And the thing is I tell students, listen, any topic is good. Um, Most 17-year-olds growing up in the United States, and not all, many have different backgrounds and different things that they've gone through, experiences, but many 17-year-olds going to school in the US have very similar stories. Um, but each and every story is unique to you. So one of my favorite essays that I read years ago was from a student here in the LA area. And she wrote about getting her driver's license on her 16th birthday. And it wasn't necessarily about getting the driver's license, it was about the independence that getting that driver's license gave her and the responsibility because she now had to drive her little brother to school. She was responsible for him every morning and how her relationship with him grew and how they got really close. And it just showed her growth, the happiness that she had to be able to take on that responsibility and feeling more grown up, and then also that relationship with her brother. So it was very personal, but it was something really banal that everybody in Southern California, I mean, I remember getting my driver's license on my 16th birthday. It's just something that we all do, and it's just not, it just seems like super cliche and banal, but it was very personal to her. So whatever subject you have, as long as you personalize it, make it yours. Could be about a family gathering. It could be whatever your favorite activity is. You know, maybe you've got 10 things that you do, but what's the one that really, really speaks to you? Or maybe, you know, some kind of a challenge that you've had. That's why I say try to take each essay and write something about it and see which ones sort of click with you. Um, and that will be the essay that's more personal. It's not about being different or being you know, having something like really exciting to write about. One thing I will say is you can definitely write about sports if that's something that's important to you. Um, but stay away from the play-by-play. First of all, you don't know who's reading your application. And if somebody doesn't understand sports and you're writing a play-by-play, they're not going to know what the heck you're talking about. Also, you're telling a story in a third person, sort of, instead of talking in a first person and telling us about yourself. So you can talk about the game and say the first game, you know, maybe I'd been sitting on the bench and finally coach said I could, you know, get off and play that game. And, you know, I was so excited. You know, I like I was speechless, you know, whatever it was, whatever feelings were going through your head at the time, how excited you were, that's going to make it personal, not the play by play where I'm learning nothing about you. So take each subject, each thing that you sort of are thinking about, and make sure you're putting it into more of a first person narrative instead of a third person, and try and dig deep, and it's going to be very personal and very unique to you.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I have another one. Comparing the GPAs and other measuring, you know, items like grades and stuff, SAT scores and everything. How important is the essay?
Well, obviously, your transcript is the most important piece of your application because you're applying to academic institutions. So your transcript, your GPA, the rigor of the grade, the classes that you're taking, your GPA trends, your rigor trends, all of those, that's the most important piece of your application. Every other piece is just going to be adding to that. So I don't have a numerical value for each piece of the application. But what the personal essay can do is if it's a good personal essay, meaning that you help us get to know you, that'll help us get to sort of determine if you're going to be a good fit on our campus. Even if your GPA is a little bit lower, but I'm reading your application and your essay and I'm just going, wow, I could just picture this student on our campus. You know, that's where that essay can really come in. It can really kind of strengthen and give you other strengths besides your SAT scores or your transcript. So that's where that's going to come in, along with all the other pieces. But this is the only piece in your application that is personal. So, you know, besides all the data and the stats that we get, this is the one piece that helps us sort of figure out who you are, and if we can picture you, you know, on our campus.
I've got one question I got from a participant. They stated, you said the open prompt for Common App tends to, is the weakest or elicits the weakest responses. Have you seen any good essays from applicants who responded to that prompt?
Yeah,
Just
there
why
are a
that prompt is
few,
in there.
there are a few, you know, if, like I said, if you've already written a personal sort of essay for maybe like a scholarship application or something, that's fine. You might, as long as you make it personal. It's the ones that just sort of write a random essay and it's like in again, in the third person, maybe you're telling a story, maybe it's beautifully written, but it has told me nothing about you. So what happens when students tend to use that one is they tend to use an essay they've already used, or they tend to write about something like some philosophical argument or, you know, some political argument or, you know, and it's well written, but it doesn't tell me anything about who you are. So that's what you need to stay away from. And the students that tend to choose that essay, that's kind of the direction they go in. So if you have something that you really want to talk to us about, that you think will really help us understand who you are as a person, and it doesn't really fit into any of the other prompts, then go for it for sure. But just, you know, make sure that it's personal. Don't kind of get stuck in that rut where that a lot of students do and just, you know, go off on a tangent and don't tell us about who you are.
Right. I don't have any more questions. Did anybody else have anyone getting more questions and ask in the chat and we can definitely discuss it. Well, if we don't have anything else, then, I mean, is there anything else that you want to kind of share any parting words, Camille? I appreciate you obviously coming in and doing this for us. I know many of our families are super thankful for these workshops from directly from the reps. To be honest, I think it's super valuable to have you be able to present to us. So I appreciate it. I know all of us counselors and our families really appreciate you.
Yeah, no, I would just say take advantage of your counselors. You guys have great counselors. Take advantage of family or friends to throw around ideas with them. Again, don't, if you have somebody that you can trust, kind of read your essay to them and see if it feels natural. There's an analogy I used to use, and it's kind of hard to use it these days because, of course, you're not walking around with hard copies of your essays anymore, but I'll use it anyway, just to give you an idea, is if you were walking down the hallway of your high school and you had your personal essay hard copy, a piece of paper, and you dropped it, and somebody picked it up and read it, they should be able to figure out who wrote that essay, even if it didn't have your name on it. So when I say it should be personal, they should be reading it and go, "Oh my God, I bet you that's John, or I bet you that's, Michelle, who wrote this essay." So that's kind of your goal. Think about that goal when you're writing your essay, to try and make it as personal as possible.
That's great. Great advice. Thank you so much. Um, oh, we actually have one more. Can I just plug in one more before we go?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry. Do the questions change from year to year, or are they pretty consistent for the students? So maybe they could start jotting down some ideas right now.
Yeah, they usually are pretty consistent, and you can just get on, you can just Google, Common App essay prompts for this year. I don't know if the official ones have come out for the upcoming, but they haven't really changed for the last few years, and either have the PIQs as far as I can remember.
Yeah.
They might tweak them a little bit, but I think for the most part, they pretty much stay the same.
I agree with you on that. I always tell students kind of wait around maybe for April-ish, and then
Mhm.
usually you can visit the websites, and those are pretty much it, same with the Common App and stuff. But I mean, like you said, they don't change too much, so they could at least do some ideas of the topics now. Most
Exactly.
likely you'll be able to use those or something similar to the official ones. So yeah, hang tight on, don't put together a final essay right now on these prompts, but kind of wait a little bit towards middle-ish of April, end of April, and I think you should be good. But thank you so much, Camille. I appreciate it. I hope everybody got a lot of great information tonight, but I just wanted to, thank everybody for attending, and you guys all have a great evening. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.